There is this invisible, entirely silent power dictating pretty much every single decision you make. A microscopic molecule that has essentially hijacked humanity. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're not just going to look at some dry biology. We're actually going to explore how understanding this one single chemical can completely change how you see your entire life. Let's get right into it.
So I want you to imagine waking up tomorrow morning and you just don't check your phone, you don't crave that morning cup of coffee, you literally couldn't care less about social media, and honestly you have absolutely zero motivation to even get out of bed. Now, you aren't sick, you aren't depressed, it's simply because one specific chemical inside your brain, something smaller than a grain of dust, just shut off. That molecule, it is the ultimate puppet master. It's the exact reason multi-billion-dollar casinos exist in the first place. It's why tech companies will fight tooth and nail just for a fraction of your attention. And it perfectly explains why one person is driven to achieve absolute greatness, becoming a billionaire or an elite athlete, while somebody else can lose an entire weekend just mindlessly scrolling. But to truly understand dopamine, we actually need to time travel back hundreds of thousands of years. Just imagine being an early human. There are no supermarkets, no smartphones, obviously. Every single day is just this brutal test of survival. Food and shelter are incredibly scarce. In that kind of harsh environment, your brain didn't really need a system for happiness. What it desperately needed was a motivation engine, just to keep you alive.
And this survival engine operated on this really simple, kind of ruthless loop. When our ancestors discovered something valuable, like say a safe cave or a bush packed with berries, the brain released dopamine. But here's the critical part, and people get this wrong all the time. Dopamine wasn't a reward for past success. It was actually an evolutionary flare going off in your brain shouting, "Hey, remember this, go after this again." It was designed strictly to make you repeat life-saving behaviors.
Now, that tiny motivation engine, it helped early humanity conquer dense forests, cross vast oceans, and eventually land on the moon. But here is the fascinating and honestly slightly terrifying twist. The exact same chemical that drove our ancestors to go out and hunt mammoths now dictates whether you open TikTok today. The biological hardware in our heads, it never changed. Literally, only our environment did.
And this brings us to what is arguably one of the biggest misunderstandings in modern science. For decades, we all comfortably believed this myth, that dopamine was just the pleasure chemical. It sounds logical, right? Eating chocolate feels good, winning feels good, but a massive scientific paradigm shift recently revealed a completely different reality. Dopamine isn't the chemical of happiness. It is the chemical of anticipation. It's the chemical of pure possibility.
Scientists actually discovered this through a pretty remarkable breakthrough. When they studied subjects with damaged dopamine systems, they noticed something super strange. The subjects didn't lose their ability to feel pleasure when they tasted food. What they lost, entirely, was their motivation. They completely stopped wanting things. Because dopamine doesn't produce pleasure when you finally get a reward, it produces that fiery desire to pursue it in the first place.
Just think about the massive discrepancy in how your brain reacts. Expecting a reward creates this towering spike in dopamine compared to actually receiving it. Whether you're planning a vacation, waiting for a package to arrive, or just anticipating a text message, your brain releases way more dopamine in the buildup than in the actual payoff. Your brain isn't chasing happiness, it's chasing the hunt itself.
Now imagine discovering this biological truth not as a neuroscientist in a lab, but as an executive at a major technology company. If dopamine is triggered by the hunt, by expectation, and by uncertainty, well, these tech giants realized a highly lucrative fact. They could literally weaponize our biology. They could take our innate evolutionary curiosity and turn it into massive profit. Uncertainty wasn't just a brain state anymore, it became a multi-billion-dollar business model.
So they built our modern digital platforms around the exact same psychological principle that you'd find in casino slot machines, the variable reward. Every time you swipe, every time you refresh your feed, every time you hear that little chime, there's a tiny, uncertain possibility of excitement. Maybe it's amazing, maybe it's absolutely nothing. Because your brain never quite knows what's coming next, that uncertainty keeps your ancient survival circuits completely, hopelessly hooked.
Millions of people are out there endlessly checking their devices every single day. And I promise you, it's not by conscious choice. It's because billions of dollars were spent building a digital marketplace straight out of your brain's most natural cravings. You see, the modern world didn't invent dopamine. It just became incredibly fluent in its language. Human attention basically became currency, and your primal drive, that became the product. But this brings us to a really compelling, almost existential paradox. If dopamine is all about the wanting, the anticipation, the thrill of the chase, what actually happens the moment you finally get what you wanted? Well,
The answer is a little unsettling. The chemical drops. The chase abruptly ends. And for so many of us, this strange, quiet emptiness sets in right after achieving a major goal or buying that perfect item you've been eyeing for months. Psychologists actually have a specific term for this endless resetting of your baseline. It's called hedonic adaptation. Your brain is literally hardwired to gradually treat extraordinary experiences as completely ordinary over time. What amazed you yesterday simply becomes your boring baseline today. And while that sounds super frustrating, it was a totally necessary evolutionary feature. Think about it. If our ancestors just took a nap after one successful hunt, they would have eventually starved to death.
That biological dissatisfaction, it brilliantly drove human progress in an era of scarcity. But think about what happens when you take that exact same survival brain and plop it down in a modern world of infinite digital abundance. I'm talking infinite scrolling, infinite shopping, infinite entertainment. We took a brain that evolved to survive a harsh desert and locked it inside a room filled entirely with digital sugar. It creates a severe human vulnerability.
And this is exactly why self-control feels like such an exhausting, almost impossible battle today. When you try to put your phone down or stop a bad habit, you aren't just fighting a cleverly designed app. You are negotiating with hundreds of thousands of years of human evolution. You're fighting a system that was fundamentally, biologically designed to keep you alive.
But I really want to be clear about something here. Dopamine is absolutely not the villain of this story. It is a completely neutral engine. Without dopamine, artists wouldn't create masterpieces, scientists wouldn't discover cures, athletes wouldn't train, and entrepreneurs wouldn't build anything. Every meaningful human achievement begins with the willingness to pursue something uncertain. The exact same system that fuels our darkest addictions is also what fuels our greatest ambitions.
The crucial takeaway here is that your brain does not judge the source of the reward. It genuinely doesn't care if the dopamine comes from writing a novel, running a marathon, or just refreshing a social media feed. It simply strengthens whatever behavior you repeat. Those daily behaviors form habits. And eventually, those habits cement themselves into your very identity. Simply put, your identity follows your dopamine.
Which brings us to the ultimate realization of our modern era. The most powerful, resourceful companies in human history are all fiercely competing for one single resource, your attention. Because attention directs your dopamine, and your dopamine directs your behavior. The real battle of the 21st century isn't for your wallet, it's for total control over what your brain chooses to focus on.
Every notification, every scroll, and every goal writes instructions directly into your oldest evolutionary system. So you are left with what is probably the most profound choice of your life. It's not a question of whether dopamine controls you, because it always will. The real question you have to ask yourself is, who decides where your dopamine points? Because deciding what is truly worth chasing might just be the most important decision you ever make. Thanks for watching this explainer.